Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. We just started, John. Thank you. Morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Kevin Brown, Chairman of the committee. I would like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Place Select Committee that is being broadcast live and recorded for publication. Just to note the appointment at annual council on the 14th of May 2026 of Councillor Kevin Brown, myself as Chairman, and of Councillor David Clark as Vice Chairman of the Place Select Committee for the 2026-27 municipal year. I'd also like to note the membership of the Place Select Committee for the 2026-27 municipal year as follows: Councillor Adams, Councillor Brill, Councillor Kevin Brown, Councillor David Clark, Councillor Neil Clark MBE, Councillor Clooney, Councillor Dale, Councillor Darrington, Councillor Drott, Councillor Introna, and Councillor Vernon. And moving on to the next item, minutes of the committee. I'd like to show hands. Pleased to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Thank you. Can I ask the committee clerk if we have any apologies?
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Neil Clark for other council business to be substituted by Councillor Sam Smith, Councillor Russell Dodd for other reasons to be substituted by Councillor Cathy Nixon.
Thank you for that. Item 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest. If any councillor or officer has an interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hand now if you have an interest to declare. If you have an interest to declare, you should state what type of interest it is and give brief details. On that, I'd like the committee to know that as a director of via East Midlands, that I have an other registrable interest in the agenda item 6, Highways Asset Management System Performance Update. And as such, I will be vacating the chair and leaving the room during the consideration of this item. And just a further note to remind members that scrutiny is a vital, non-political function of local government, which focused on the issues that matter most to residents and communities. Scrutiny plays a clear role in holding decision makers to account, helping to improve public services and shape more effective policies. On that, I'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, Police Department Performance, Quarter 4, 2025-2026, and I invite the officers to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides an exception-based overview of Police Department's performance for Quarter 4, 25-26, so that's the period that covers January to March 26. Overall, we've seen a strong, stable delivery across most services, particularly in infrastructure, regeneration, property and community-facing activity. Key highlights include progress on economic growth and associated housing delivery, continued energy use reduction and positive performance across community services. However, there are ongoing pressures in highways operational performance and waste services, alongside wider risks relating to cost inflation, funding uncertainties and external dependencies, particularly for our major schemes. Overall performance remains robust, with targeted management action in place to address risks and support delivery into 26-27. I'll pass over to my colleagues to give more detail on particular division performance.
David. Yeah, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Chair. So Wayne Bexton sends his apologies as he's attending the UK Reef today with Councillor Walker Gurley. So I have the pleasure of reporting the Quarter 4 for Economy, Environment and Assets Directorate. So as set out in the report, the Directorate has continued to perform well overall in Quarter 4. The majority of activity, as set out in Appendix 1, is on track, and several programmes are making really good progress. So, for example, the work that we do on economic growth, regeneration and investment through our business support programme exceeded targets. Planning services, again, is another good example, which exceeded the targets in determining applications and responding to the statutory consultations for both planning and also for highways. And then the property group delivered their key milestones in property rationalisation, including substantial reductions in energy and carbon across the council buildings. And overall, annually, the land development group saw 23 million capital receipts generated this year, resulting in the delivery of 1,000 homes. So in terms of improving performance, we've got some sort of standouts, for example, on the increase in numbers of hectares of woodland planting for Trees for Climate, number of trees planted on the County Council's land, and we saw 35% less emissions from NCC buildings and 34% less energy use in NCC buildings as well. The report, as Chris mentioned, lists the projects where we're also seeing improved performance, which is listed in the report. There were some declining performance. We saw one project in Q4 where the rated status declined, which was for Portland school expansion. So overall, Chair, pleased to report that the economy, environment and assets perform well in meeting its performance indicators and project timescales for Q4. Just pass you over to David.
Through you, Chair, as the report notes in the Highways Transport and Waste Management teams, we've got a mixed bag of performance. Broadly speaking, most performance indicators across the board are green and meeting their targets, with the exception of those associated with responding to potholes and then subsequent processing of insurance claims that come in for the Q4. That obviously spans the winter period, where there was an exceptional level of demand during January. We received as many notifications of potholes from the community as we did in the previous year's period, January through to March. So 3 months worth of reports within a single month, effectively overloaded the system and compromised our ability to respond to everything in a timely manner. That shows through in KPIs. There is some more detail on this that I've come prepared to talk to at the Highways report. I think agenda 6, item 6 on the agenda, and just delve into that in a little bit more detail. The impact of this, though, the quarters 1 to 3 performance was green across the board. Q4, amber and red, and the net effect of that is to turn the annual performance for the overall year to amber as well. I'll leave it there, if that's okay.
So I'll just cover the community school child protection element of the department, acknowledging this is part of the public health and community performance, but the public health element of the performance comes to only community, so that's why you're not seeing that as part of this report. But overall performance remains generally positive, with core services meeting their statutory requirements, and they're continuing to support community resilience, safety and wellbeing. And you'll see some of the impact that we're having in terms of some of the impacts onto our communities in the Appendix A, with over 1.6 million engagements with our library service and over 158,000 people visiting our 3 military parks. We have continued strong performance within our basic planning, trade standards, registration and library services. They're continuing to have strong compliance, they're generating income and they're getting good customer satisfaction. In terms of our community focus programmes, so those might be things like Homes for the UK, Homes for Ukraine, and our welfare support schemes, they're continuing to deliver effectively across a number of our communities. Many of you will be aware that we're also developing further work in terms of our community resilience fund and our local communities fund, which will be launching imminently. So please do watch this space and to see some really positive opportunities around those. But overall, we are working well. There are small areas, number of areas where we are particularly affected with uncertainty or workforce pressures, but the teams are working hard and working through that. And overall, we'll see the performance is really positive. There are 2 areas that we've highlighted that we're slightly in performance. One is around registering deaths within 5 days. We still have a high performance at 85%, but that's not meeting the 95% target at the moment. And we're working with the team to make sure that we look at how we bring that performance up for the next quarter. And there's one indicator around auditing some of our safety at sports venues, which we'll be moving on moving forward. But overall, the service remains stable, operationally effective, and we do have improvement activities for those couple of areas where we're just to mark on that. But I'm happy to take any questions on that.
I'd like to thank the officers for their introduction and to move the recommendations are detailed in the report and seek a seconder.
I'd like to second that.
Thank you. And on that, I'd like to open the floor up to debate. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just want to refer back to Communities Cultural Protection, page 18, the report and the reference to the football grounds and sports grounds particularly. You said obviously it was going to move forward. Can you just expand on, first of all, why we're 20% behind in terms of sports safety. I mean, obviously, it's quite central to particularly where we are located here in terms of the county's success and its ability to drive tourism into the area. And obviously, we want to make sure that we're selling a safe offering as well as a high quality one. So, first of all, what methods and what things have been taken into account to enable this to happen? What work is planned to enable this to get up to its 100% completion, and what is the time frame on that as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. So really important point. In terms of our safety sports grants, we're actually going to go into a bit more detail around that in the next report. So if I don't cover anything there, then please do feel free to cover that. Lucy will come in, she's the expert on this. But we basically have 4 grounds that are regulated that we need to make sure that they have their general safety certificates. All grounds have general safety certificates, but they have a regular audit process. Now we have got some capacity issues in the team at the moment, but we are planning on doing those audits in the next month or so. So I would anticipate by the next quarter that we will be up to speed. But what we're looking at here is probably more audited slightly later than the end of the year. But I'm not anticipating that affecting any of the quality of the service in terms of the safety of those sports grounds. If we have any imminent concerns around those, we work through those with the SAG team that support that broader safety sports ground. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just one slight additional point was just around to avoid this happening in the future. I just wonder if there's some sort of a possibility of crossover in the departments that you could drag in if the situation happens again, so that there was somebody sort of up-trained, so what's the word? Upskilled, that's the word I'm after, to enable that to not drop into that level again, as I said, because it was such an important area of, specifically for the area to drive tourism and effectively increase business.
Yeah, thank you. And I wouldn't say that this is affecting any tourism, because all of the, we are still meeting our statutory responsibilities in terms of making sure that those grounds are safe and they can still continue to work. So it won't be affecting any numbers in terms of if they need to deliver events or anything like that. So please do be assured that that won't have an impact there. In terms of looking at broader resilience, we are looking at how we develop more strength and resilience in the emergency planning and safety at sports ground team. And we're literally doing that work imminently, where we're hoping to strengthen and have more crossover and more resilience within that team in our safety at sports ground. So please do be assured that we're already looking at that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Sweet.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Chairman. I think that we've gone on too long and not spoke about potholes, so I'd just like to bring us back into the most important thing, if I may. On the highway trade and waste indicators, Appendix A, page 17, I wonder if we can, through you, Martin and David, if we can bring in some new indicators for the next quarter, and that if that could be on the right first time approach and how many of those we're doing and on what percent, so we can monitor that. And also, I think we still have the policy, I don't think I've seen it change, where if we do a category 1 defect, we should aim to go back within 90 days to do a proper patch repair. And whether we can have those indicators in as well to see how many of those we're doing, particularly through the summer, where you've got capacity to go out and do those. So that's just a question on the data set, if I may. Just looking at category 2 defects, which is amber. And it says that we've only responded to them 81% within 28 days. I think we can all see that category 2 has probably been where the most problems have been. We've all driven into County Hall every day and we've seen that one outside the car park that took months to get sorted. So I wonder if all the extra resources the administration is putting in, if that will affect category 2s as well as category 1s. That'd be helpful to know. And also, sticking with highways, the one that's red that plays on my mind is the fact that we missing the target of applying to residents within 10 working days. I sometimes fear that politicians or public officers try not to go back to residents if there's nothing new to say. And I always think that's the wrong approach, because the biggest worry for residents or frustration for residents that then passes on to councillors is when they don't know what's happening. And if the message is nothing's changed but we're still coming, then let's say that, because it will drive down complaints, drive down calls to councillors and our customer service team. So I just wonder what we're doing to ensure that that 10 working day response time is met in the next quarter as well. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. In terms of metrics around monitoring the first time permanent repair, yes, that's our intention anyway. Now that the crews are out working, we're just starting to gather the initial set of data with the view that we would be tabling it in an updated version of these KPI metrics in future reports. In terms of the category 2 defects, yes, the additional resources that we're now able to deploy should have a positive impact on the performance there. One of the primary reasons that the category 2 defects were off target in the prior quarter was because those resources were redeployed onto dealing with the influx of category 1 defects, because they have an obvious higher priority. And then your final point, again, okay, I'll come on to that. In terms of your final question, the response to inquiries, completely agree with you. Every inquiry should get a response. And typically that is the case. I think it's more the exception rather than the norm that we wouldn't respond. However, we do on an annual basis field kind of circa 60 to 70,000 inquiries. So some will fall between the cracks, particularly if they don't come through our formal channels, emails to officers, rather than coming through our customer inquiry channels, typically are ones that we struggle to keep track of. The reason that we're off target for the quarter is, again, that influx. Whilst the total number of inquiries we received last year is kind of on par with previous years, there was a much greater concentration during that Q4 period. So a lot more inquiries coming in all at once. And again, the performance being off track is just a symptom of the system being a bit overloaded, and we aren't able to respond to everybody in a timely manner. We are correcting that. And I think in the next report, you'll see that the overall performance for the year in full was still green, just the quarter that was off track. In terms of just going back to the pothole repair, we have started a piece of work to review the highway inspection risk manual and looking at the timeframes that we've set ourselves for responding to the different categories of defects to better enable that first time permanent response. The kind of tongue-in-cheek comment that's been made is you can have it done temporarily and wrong in 24 hours or have it done right first time in 72. But we need to make sure we manage the risk exposure to our community during the 72 hours because we want to keep our community safe. We also don't want to do anything that's going to drive up the cost of our insurance premiums because that's money better spent fixing the roads.
Councillor John.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I one general comment and then I've got a question. General comment is that if we look at the figures as they're presented, we see a moment in time, but we don't have any figures for last year or previous quarters where we can see a trend or sort of direction of travel. It's certainly something that we changed or started to change in children's and families, where we made sure there were some historical figures that we could just reflect upon. So that's one comment, and I will say the same in agenda item 6, where we've got similar information, but no historical figures behind it. On highways, transport and waste, the very first one, where we've got the number of emergency incidents attended. Could I just ask how many emergency incidents did we have in the quarter? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Can I take that question offline? I simply don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I can find out the number for you and report back.
Apologies.
Yeah, no problem. It just seems that if it's 90%, that would suggest that we must have had 10, at least 10, of which one wasn't tendered within 2 hours, and 10 inside a quarter just seemed a strange figure for an emergency. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask a question. With the winter just gone, severe, can I ask to what extent, if any, are severe weather impacts now embedded into asset management, asset management, inspection and maintenance strategies?
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to elaborate on this answer further in the next report. But as you'll be aware, we've, in conjunction with phase 1 and phase 2 capital programs, put in place a 6-point plan for addressing the condition of our roads. And one of those 6 points is specifically for getting ready for the next winter, be much more prepared. But also ensuring that the condition of our roads going into winter is at the best possible condition they can be, so they're more resilient going in, and then we have resources ready to respond when winter damage occurs, so that we can be very proactive in minimising the amount of time it takes to maintain the network and keep the roads in a much better condition than we did this year just gone.
Thank you for that. It's just with Councillor Smith's response times, that's all. That's why I just wanted to ask that at this stage. Do you mind if I ask them? Councillor Adams, yes.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of things I've just spotted actually. The gully, I just want to raise the gully cleanse frequency as well for Q4 year end. It says 100% of gullies cleansed within stated frequency. I drove past 2 yesterday that were overflowing. I know they've been reported before. So I just want to understand where that lies. That's at the bottom of page 17, highways, transport and waste, right at the very bottom there. It does say green, but I just want to understand what that is. What is the frequency? Because if the frequency is based on it being reported and repaired, then obviously that can't be right. If the frequency is based on inspections, then potentially that could be right if they were all being done in a cyclical, got a real problem saying words there, cyclical fashion. That's the first one. Thank you. The second one as well, just to go back to your point there, David, around better preparation this year. So in terms of the winter resilience programme that was in the previous year, do we have have we got available data that shows the direct difference between when a winter resilience programme is in place and when one isn't, and the difference in terms of the damage it did to our performance in terms of answering calls, but also in terms of damage in terms of the road surfaces? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair. So in terms of the gully KPI, just for clarity, that is about the cyclical cleaning of so the sucker truck turning up to empty silt from the gully sump. So it is done on a frequency. Again, off the top of my head, I can't recall the frequencies because I think they vary by road classification. The reason it is green, though, is you may have a drainage network that's got some gullies on it that are blocked because the pipe has collapsed, for example. The gully truck will turn up, clean this up, note that it has got a more substantial problem, and then that will get logged in the system for capital maintenance so that the pipework can be inspected, repaired, and the blockage removed. So even though the gully is still blocked and may be flooding, the actual detail of the KPI at hand has been complied with because the gully truck was there. It did its clean. But it also effectively did a capital maintenance inspection and triggered a more substantial piece of work at the same time. In terms of the second part of your question, we've not, I suppose, done a detailed report into a side-by-side comparison between the 2 winters. I would question the value of doing it, given that it's fairly intuitive that the more preparations you make, or the less preparations you make going into a winter, the more likely you are to have a better or worse time. That said, as you'll hear from me in the next report, a lot of these things are not just simply a symptom of point in time investment, but actually how the overall system has been operating for a sustained period of time. You can be as well prepared to go into the next winter, but if we've been underfunding the roads for a substantial period of time and their overall conditions deteriorated, they're going to be inherently more vulnerable to winter damage, and you'll get a lot more damage present, and you'll constantly be on a race, an arms race between a deteriorating network that gets more easily damaged, ramping up your workload, and an arms race to keep ramping up your resource to meet that demand. So what we need to do is actually address the systemic root cause issues so that our network is inherently more resilient going into winter, rather than constantly throwing more and more and more reactive maintenance at our network, because it's incredibly poor value for money doing it that way.
Should I just come back again, Chair, do you mind?
Can I just let you go on?
I'll be very quick, sorry. Just to expand on that slightly, thank you for that. Because obviously we have got comparable data from previous years over the past, well, as long as the County Council has been in operation. So we've got comparable data we can use. And it does just seem very odd that at one particular time where we didn't have that winter resilience programme, suddenly we had the worst 3 months of our, not, like you said, literally everything fell over, whether it be answering the phones on time or whatever. So I suppose that's why that clarity is quite important, because if we've got all that historical data before, where year after year after year, well, we've had some serious storms as well, the likes of, whether it be Babette or whatever, we've not had that problem. It just seems incredibly convenient that that's the time we're concerned about long-term investment, rather than, was it right? Do we need a winter resilience programme in every year? Absolutely, probably is the answer. And to then say it's sort of been based on maybe underinvestment over a period is fine, but obviously then you've got to look at the previous 10, 15 years, 20 years data to make that assumption in a very short window. So personally, I don't know what the committee thinks. I'd love to see that comparison in actual raw data terms and what happened during that key period without that in comparison to previous years. Thank you.
To reply to that?
Yeah, through Michelle, look, happy to do the comparison. From what I've seen of the data and the long-term trends over the last 5-10 years, my expectation is it'll probably reveal that the narrative that you're talking about there is substantially accurate. It may also reveal that it wasn't actually the worst winter. It's not actually the worst condition that our roads have been in. Well, I'll bring you back a report that
Perfect.
sheds some daylight on it.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Brill.
Thank you, Chair. Can we return, please, to Communities, Culture and Protection, page 18? On row 4, there we have some information about engagement with library services. I have a great interest in library services, not least as there are 2 excellent libraries in Carlton West. I think I've 3 quick questions. I see that there's a target for engagement with libraries in a very precise figure, 937,500. How is that figure arrived at? Secondly, what is the nature of that engagement? And lastly, of course, and this is excellent news, there's a massive overuse. My last question, does that overuse have some kind of cost or budgeting consequence? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So in terms of the figure overall, I can get some further information in terms of what constitutes that figure for you. But I would anticipate that there will be a range of engagement types. So some will be through the door, some will be if people are engaging in particular courses or groups. So we have a number of groups for our younger population and also for our older population. And then there will also be engagement online. So if somebody is requesting or lending the book online, that will also count in engagement. What I can do for you, Councillor, is I can bring back a specific report in terms of, so I'll give you the right information on that. In terms of the overperformance, I think what we're seeing here is that actually the provider that we've got here, Inspire, is very, very good at what they do. And they think about a number of innovative ways that they can deliver services differently and accessibly, and also how they really respond to those community needs, which is why I think there's such a well engaged service across the county. In terms of budget implications, Inspire is the same as many other organisations in terms of they do have cost pressures in terms of inflation on staffing or fuel or energy or maintaining the buildings. And depending on which part of that, the council will support as much as it possibly can around that. You will, so for example, additional funding has gone into supporting some of those cost pressures in the budget that was approved in February. But please do be assured that we work very closely with Inspire. We have regular contract and performance monitoring meetings with them, and we do have that ongoing conversation with them. But I think what you're seeing there is actually that we're really proud and pleased of the performance that Inspire delivers, and that's why we're seeing such great performance there. So we just continue to support them.
If I may, Chair, can I just come in off the back of that? Councillor Brill, yeah, I had an excellent day with Inspire yesterday with the Chief Executive, Peter. And we spent a good day travelling around some of Nottinghamshire's libraries, started the workshop with Warsop, and then we ended up in Mansfield. And it was clear to see, I think a lot of people think the library is just a library, you go in there, you take a book. From what I saw yesterday, and my own experience of going in Nottinghamshire's libraries, they are much more than just a library. They are a community hub. So, for example, in Worksop Library, there's a great cafe, and it was full. There must have been 20, 30 people at any one time in that cafe, drinking coffee, reading the magazines, reading a book, whatever it was. In other areas of the library, there were people having meetings, using the photocopier, using the computers, and then we travelled to Warsop, and there was a small group there that were having a meeting. So they weren't necessarily using the library for the traditional sense, but it was a community engagement space. So it's clear to see that, within Nottinghamshire, I think it's a really, really important, one of the best services that I've seen, that libraries are so much more than just libraries. They really are a community engagement space. So I hope that gives you a little bit of context as to why those figures will be so high, which is good. Thank you.
Councillor Darrington.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. I'm going to jump back to Potter for just a second or two, if that's okay. So, in the interest of efficiency and good practice, can I assume that we have Category 1 and Category 2 teams that are separate? If a Category 1 team is referring to Category 1 pothole whilst standing in a Category 2 pothole, what is the directive from the top as to whether we walk away from the Category 2 whilst we're there, or do we actually repair it? I've got 3 or 4 evident issues, not just in my patch, but in surrounding patches where Cat 1s have been repaired in very, very close proximity to a clear Cat 2 slash Cat 1. So the timescale from it becoming a Cat 2 to a Cat 1 is probably a matter of weeks, but we walk away. So in the interest of efficiency and good practice, for what from the top.
Through you, Chair. The direction from the top is one of a blended approach. So for context, it's been well discussed that we've got a backlog of deferred maintenance that has a cost associated to it, circa £400 million. That massively exceeds our maintenance budget. So it is a rationing exercise when we're allocating work to the crews and choosing which work gets repaired and which is allowed to persist and be addressed at a later date. You are right, there is practice going on at the moment where we are turning up and repairing only the Category 1 defects and ignoring Category 2 and 3 until a later date. It is for that rationing reason that is being done. There are also some practical reasons. For example, if a road is on our capital maintenance programme for this year or next year, it makes little sense to come and patch everything on the road to then turn up with a full machine lay crew and rip it all out and resurface it. So we're intending to only deal with safety critical defects to keep our community safe, leaving everything else so that the main capital maintenance scheme can pick it up. So that is being driven by being the more cost effective approach. That said, where there are roads where there are Cat 1 and 2 defects on, but relatively few in number, and the road is not on our maintenance programme, then it's inherently sensible to do everything whilst we're there in one visit. So that hopefully gives you an understanding of the drivers behind the blended approach.
Thank you.
Councillor Bingham, you've indicated you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, just on the same subject and in response to Councillor Adams as well, we came into the administration last May. We inherited a budget and programme which ran pretty much unchanged through the winter. As far as I'm concerned, our first season, if you like, November, there were 3 freeze-thaw cycles that set up the time bomb that went off after Christmas with an extensive wet period. So we were very much inundated with excessive work in all areas. There was no, within that programme and budget, there was no £4 million winter resilience fund. I think any comparison now would be apples and pears or apples and oranges, but that can be done by officers. When we realised the extent of the problem, we implemented a £2 million urgent repairs programme and have followed it up with a record investment in highways. So yeah, that's where we're at. And by the way, a lot of the problems that came about, and Councillor Darrington just referred to, is previous methods that we used were 30 mil repairs, which wouldn't reach the category 1 threshold when they are reported and investigated. As the 40 mil. So again, that's caused problems, which we are now addressing, and you'll find out when we present our report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just to move on to visitor numbers at the country parks, if I may, Jodie. It bugs me and my residents that if you want to go out on a funny day out to look at park, I think Councillor Barlow's raised this, you have to pay £7 to park. And you can't just, that's fair enough if you're there all day, you're going back and you have a picnic, that's all fine. If you just want to go and walk the dog for an hour or two, £7 seems a bit extortionate, particularly if the government's not very helping anybody with inflation or cost of living or energy prices. So I just wonder if we can trial reducing that or introducing an hourly fee on a trial basis to see what that does to your numbers in the next quarter, and if that's effective or not. I just wondered if we could look into that.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Smith, and yes, I am aware of the query that has been raised. And we have looked at this, and we have worked with Daddy around the car parking charges, because I know there's really links in terms of some really special packages and things that the colleagues and communities are keen to see. We will continue to have those conversations around parking. There's also a really fine balance in terms of the parking charges to create a sustainable business model for Brookfield Abbey versus making sure that we have spaces that are as accessible as possible. One thing that I would suggest though, if there are community spaces and the country parks that people regularly access, is there is an annual membership, and that significantly reduces the individual cost of those. So I would advise looking at the annual membership. I would also continue those conversations with Brookfield. But I will need to work with them in terms of obviously making sure that that financial model is sustainable.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Okay then. I'd like to thank the officers for a clear and comprehensive report, for all the work undertaken across the police department during the period covered. I'd like to thank the members for their constructive comments and questions, which have helped to highlight both areas of strong performance and those requiring continued focus. The committee's observation will be noted and will help to inform ongoing oversight and future reporting. And I'd like to ask Martin to read out summary of the discussions and detailed issues that have been risen.
Fantastic. So yeah, quite a bit. So obviously what Councillor Smith said at the beginning about the KPIs about right first time and 90-day inspection. So I'll check the wording of that and we'll refer that to the officers for future reports. So there's what Councillor Trony said about the future reports that come to committee. We'll make sure that they do give that comparative information so you actually can see like a trend and see the direction of travel. So I think that is helpful and members do find that useful. We'll also ask David to do that report that can be circulated to members on the comparison about how the roads are and like the funding and winter preparedness and all that kind of stuff. And just to note as well that what we're talking about library performance, there is a report comes to a future meeting on cultural services, and we can make sure that a breakdown of that kind of performance and how libraries are engaged with is included in that report. As Viv said, what we have at this report is really varied and there's lots of different things to dig down in there, so we'll make sure that's included in that one. And I think that's it.
Okay, so can I take the recommendations to the vote? Thank you for that. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda, emergency planning and safety action. I would like to invite Joey Stoney, Stoll, Cabinet Member for Communities and Public Health, to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce this report to provide an overview of the Council's arrangements for emergency planning and safety at our sports grounds. This local authority has the statutory duty to plan for potential emergencies and to respond if they occur. We prepare for a wide range of incidents such as severe floods, major fires, transport disasters, as well as terrorist attacks. In the event of such emergencies, we play a vital role in both responding to the incident and then the recovery from it afterwards. The County Council's fundamental duty is to ensure that Nottinghamshire communities are as resilient as possible to the impact of any major emergency. This report provides assurance that we have robust emergency planning arrangements in place to meet our statutory duty. Our response to recent incidents such as the winter storms of 2023 and 2024 and a gas explosion in Worksop in 2025 demonstrate that the County Council's readiness to respond urgently to emergencies and work effectively with partners to minimise the impacts, as well as identify areas where we can improve the management of future incidents. Our message is that emergency planning is everybody's business. Whether we are holding an event, securing a building, or protecting groups in the community, having a strong emergency planning function in place limits damage, protects property, and above all, saves lives. I welcome this committee's comments and reflections on this important work. And to provide further detail, I'll hand over to Lucy Rotter, who is a consultant in public health and communities. Thank you.
So I'll start by introducing myself and my colleague Paul, and then we've got a brief presentation that summarises the key headlines from the report. And then happy to take those questions. So I'm Lucy Rotter, consultant in communities, so work as part of this senior leadership team, and in my portfolio, I lead on emergency planning and safety of sports grounds to the authority, so provide that overall strategic leadership. And my colleague Paul, who's team manager for emergency planning, oversees the daily operational monitoring of the team. So I can just put up my presentation. So it's not quick as today. Right, here we go. So as the Councillor Stills mentioned in his introduction, we have a statutory duty around emergency planning, and that is set out under a huge range of legislation, but the primary legislation that we worked in is the Civil Contingencies Act 2004 rather, and that sets out our duties with regards to protecting our communities and residents, working both as an individual organisation, but also through our partnership with other key public services across Nottingham and Nottinghamshire as part of something called the Local Resilience Forum, LRF. And in terms of the work of our emergency planning team and the wider priorities of the organisation, that is guided by current and emerging risks, both at a national level and those that are specific to Nottinghamshire. So as you'll see from that list there, I won't go through it one by one, there's a range of risks that sit both on the national government risk register, but also on our local community risk register, some of which where the risk is sort of fairly uniform across the country, so you don't see a lot of variation from area to area, but some which are very much area specific. So in Nottinghamshire, for example, we know we've got a particular risk around flooding, so that's something that we expect to see perhaps more than other authorities, particularly over the winter. Also thinking at the moment, we've got emerging risks with the geopolitical situation, so responding to what's going on in the Middle East and potential impacts abroad and here in the UK. So in terms of our emergency management arrangements, as an authority, I'm going to get some funny animations here. Overall responsibility for emergency planning, response and recovery sits with the corporate leadership team. They provide that overall strategic direction, but that's overseen in most part by our emergency management board, which Viv chairs. That is a multi-agency group of officers, so with representation from across the council's departments and services. And then within each department, we have RSEMGs, that's risk, safety and emergency management groups. So that's looking at the specific plans and policies in place within departments for responding to incidents, emergencies, and also in the event that we have challenges around business continuity. So lots of IT function, for example. There is a separate business continuity forum, which we're going to be reinvigorating shortly, particularly thinking about some of the really big risks around cyber attacks that we know are prominent at the moment. And again, there's been specific training and briefing for officers from our IT service recently. And then we have our dedicated emergency planning team, which Paul manages. And as I mentioned, their core duty really is to oversee the planning, response to and recovery from incidents. Broadly speaking, the work of the team is split between their sort of business as usual functions, so that's core activities around planning and preparedness, training, exercises, debriefs, lessons learned following incidents. But then the incident response, and a big part of the team's work is providing a 24/7 on-call function. So we have a duty phone staffed by officers within the team, and we're the first point of call for cascade from particular emergency services, but other partners in the event of incidents occurring across the county. And examples of some recent incidents that you may well be aware of. So, Councillor Storm mentioned was the gas explosion at a house on John Street in Worksop last year. Also, Storm Claudia at the end of last year in November. That wasn't declared a major incident, there's still significant disruption and a lot of activity for officers internally that week to mitigate the impacts. We saw wildfires at the end of last summer in Sherwood Forest. Again, we were able to mobilise around. And actually very recently, after this report was drafted, you may be aware there was a major incident in Rushcliffe with a fire at an industrial site. So the fire service led on the multi-agency LRF response to that incident, but we had an important role to play. We had a training session for elected members back in November that Paul Katie, previous team manager at the Nine delivered. And we were able to publish an emergency planning booklet in both hard copy and hopefully in digital version as well, to help guide members about the role you can play both in preparing for emergencies and really working with our communities around that resilience, but also in the event emergency and supporting that recovery afterwards. That booklet's got all the key numbers you need in case we need to report an incident out of hours, whether that's about highways, national grid, or anything else going on that needs an urgent response before 9 o'clock the next morning. And then finally, just wanted to touch on a separate function, so it's governed by an entirely different set of legislation, not part of our core emergency planning work, but it is delivered through our emergency planning team. It's a significant part of our work. Paul and I, who are the two named officers for safety sports grounds. So mentioned the names of the legislation there, but it's a law that came in first following stadium disasters at Ibrox, Glasgow Rangers, and at Bradford City. Back in the 70s, and then lastly some guidance that came in from government in the early 90s following the Hillsborough disaster. But under that legislation and through the Green Guide, the local authority has a statutory duty around safety certification for any designated sports ground that falls within their boundary. And to be a designated ground, that's any ground with a capacity over 10,000, or in the case of football clubs, it's 5,000 or over. Or if it's premises with a regulated stand that holds over a certain number of spectators. So not all local authorities will have a safety sports grounds function if they don't have any designated grounds on their patch. I think we've got probably amongst local authorities nationally one of the biggest numbers and certainly very high profile mix in terms of Premier League football club, international test cricket venue. So Forest City Grounds, Royal Stadium, Mansfield, Trowbridge Cricket Club, and then regulated stand at Southern Racecourse. And in terms of our main duties, we issue clubs and grounds with an annual safety certificate, and the primary function of that safety certificate is to set the maximum capacity for the ground that can be safely permitted. And with that, for them to be able to admit that maximum capacity, it sets out the terms and conditions with which they need to comply. And we do that through convening and chairing multi-agency safety advisory groups, SAGs, for each of the grounds, and a regime of annual audit and safety inspections, including during performance inspections and turning up during matches, both announced and unannounced, to check everything's in place. Where safety incidents do occur, we play a key role in overseeing the review and response to those incidents. And also as well, we tend to get involved in sort of ad hoc work outside of the typical business as usual safety certification work. So colleagues may be aware that Eastern Forest submitted a planning application to Rushden Borough Council to significantly redevelop City Ground and add 15-20,000 capacity. So that's something that we've consulted on as part of the planning process. Mansfield Town are holding a boxing event at their stadium at the end of May, which again we have to issue a special safety certificate for. So that's just to give you a brief snapshot of our work around safety sports grounds. Just to note that it's particularly high profile politically at the moment. I think colleagues are aware of an incident at the beginning of the year with Aston Villa's safety advisory group, a decision they took about allowing fans to travel from Israel for a European match. Following that, members of the safety advisory group called to parliamentary select committee. I think there's particular scrutiny of the police involvement in that decision. And off the back of that, the Home Office is going to be issuing guidance shortly. It's due this week, but I think it's been delayed. But again, may shape our work around safety sports grounds. We are also being audited by the national regulatory body within the government in early June, just to check that we're up to scratch. And then just very quickly wanted to talk through a couple of specific case studies of how we've executed our statutory duties and provided that lead role or contribution to responding to or exercising for major incidents. And so in the autumn, we had exercise Pegasus, and it was sort of tier 1 national exercise with all levels of government and down to localities. And it was to test our ability to respond to a novel infectious disease pandemic like COVID. This came off the back of the COVID inquiry, which identified that we had a real gap at national level, missing a pandemic strategy, essentially. So various partners involved, we had an emergence phase, containment phase, a mitigation and recovery phase, and worked through a sort of trial simulated scenario to support identifying gaps for us. So the strengths we identified for that is we've got very experienced staff locally across the system, very strong local collaboration between partner agencies, and lots of lessons learned and well captured from COVID. The areas for development that we're taking forward now, those sort of lessons learned, is challenges around getting timely local data, issues with PPE procurement, which was a particular issue locally in the early phases of COVID, and over reliance on national guidance, so just making sure we're ready to go in the event that we saw something similar again. And the new national public preparedness strategy on the back of that exercise, which is to be published later this year. And then, I think very briefly involved with this, but they've played a lead role, and Paul as well. I mentioned the explosion property in Worksop last year, and unfortunately, there's one fatality there. 66 properties evacuated, and one of our key roles was in partnership with other agencies, was setting up a rest centre for people evacuated, and that was open, I think, for the best part of the week following the incident. Several evacuees have really complex medical needs and some social care needs, and also obviously the sort of trauma and those immediate psychological impacts of what was going on. Also in a particular area of Worksop where communities with language barriers, and I think again just being able to support colleagues from support residents from a range of groups. Across the local resilience forum, we stood up that urgent emergency response, and one of the things we were able to do really effectively was use system biomosaic that we set up previously to identify vulnerable people, so particular residents who may need additional support. And so the actions that we took, particularly as a local authority, so Fire and our highways team were responsible for closing off roads in the surrounding area. As I mentioned, we set up that rest centre and actually volunteered with a huge range of teams across the organisation, so planning, adult social care, health and safety, property services, all volunteered on a rolling basis throughout that week to make sure we had 7-day cover. We supported Basketball District Council with identifying and providing suitable accommodation, so for the most part putting people up in hotels. Specialists from ARC were there on site providing structural support, structural engineering input and clearing the site. The door knocking, welfare checks, supporting with their food and putting comms out on social media, and some other things. So a really important role there to play with supporting partners. And that's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to take your questions.
1 minute, Jim. Jim, I'd like to thank the officers for the presentation and their reports. And I'd like to move the recommendations I've detailed in the report and seek a seconder.
I'd like to second that.
Thank you. Before we move to debate, as we've seen and heard, this report provides a comprehensive overview of the council's statutory responsibilities as a Category 1 responder under the Civil Contingencies Act, including the framework, governance arrangements and partnerships in place to ensure effective preparedness for and response to major incidents. It also sets out the role of the emergency planning team and the importance of multi-agency work through the local resilience forum and the systems in place to maintain business continuity and support community resilience across Nottinghamshire. Members are now invited to consider the contents of the report and comment on the effectiveness of the current arrangements as I now open it up to debate. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. The Terrorism or Protection of Premises Bill received royal assent on April last year. This places a statutory duty on qualifying premises and events to take proportionate and reasonable measures to improve public safety and protect against the threat of terrorism. What impact will this law, referred to as Martin's Law, have on local sports venues, and is the council confident that all the relevant venues are preparing adequately for its implementation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Actually, very timely.
Paul attended the National Sports Ground Safety Authority conference yesterday, and the main item there was around Martin's Law and the impact for sports grounds. So am I able just to pass over to you, Paul, just to give a brief update?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, from a sports grounds perspective, as you expect, the 4 sports grounds that you mentioned there are already really very much on board in terms of preparing for that act. So can offer some assurances there that through our sort of general inspections and auditing arrangements, we'll be doing that closely. The conference I attended yesterday, there was input from the SIA, Security Industry Authority, who are going to be the regulatory enforcement body for the Martin's Law. I think there'll be a bit of work between now and next April to understand a bit more about how the SIA are going to work and how that's going to affect the work of the safety advisory groups. So there's a bit more understanding that's needed around that, I think. But certainly that sort of arrangement is there, and we'll work with the SIA on that. In terms of the future, Lucy mentioned as well as part of the SBA's conference the guidance that's going to be coming out in September now for safety advisory groups. So again, we'll be able to do some more arrangements here. The one thing I guess that might need a bit more thought around that topic is actually not the 4 grounds we mentioned there. Under the Martin's Law, there'll be the standard and the enhanced tiers. So some of our lesser sports grounds will still have responsibilities under the Martin's Law. So there'll be maybe questions that we consider about how much we need to be involved in that from a sports grounds perspective. So perhaps we need to consider some other grounds for that council.
If I may just add to that, Chair, so thanks, colleagues, for giving a really helpful insight in terms of specifically the safety sports grounds element. I suppose what I wanted to just provide is give you some broader reassurance around what we're doing around the contest agenda generally, which is the national agenda in terms of tackling counter-terrorism. And that we have made significant progress over the past couple of years in terms of our work to do, a lot of work around prevent, prepare and protect. And we have some key task and finish groups and key meetings across the council, which will also be doing with our districts and boroughs around what is our approach to making sure that we are preventing the threat, but also making sure that we are able to protect and prepare for any threats that are coming. And our health and safety team have been really helpful in terms of really thinking around what that means for our individual, our assets and our properties. So it might be these buildings, but also the buildings out in our communities. And I just wanted to also provide some assurance that because we have seen that increase in threat level nationally recently, we did have a specific emergency management board this week where we were looking at what does that mean for us as an organisation and what does that mean for our communities, to make sure that everybody is alert and not alarmed. And that's sort of one of the key messages that we would want to be making sure that we're trained at the moment. But please do be assured that we are working with a broad range of colleagues in terms of making sure that we are mitigating the risks.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. Right. What I'd like to do, Chair, just ask you a couple of brief questions. I've got quite a comprehensive list here. Can I put them in by writing?
Yes, you may. Can we ask one at a time?
Sure. I'm looking at the structure. My background, I've been involved in these sort of meetings with 3 Olympic Games and a whole raft of others through the police and military. So I started reading this about 3 days ago, and I thought, wow, okay, yeah. And what I'm having difficulty with myself is toning down from the police and military aspects to how it affects the community, which is where I am now. So, you know, some of the things you mentioned are pretty good. I'll focus on this one question, then, Chair. The local resilience forum structure. Nice job. The presentation was good, thank you. Nice job. Everybody has these structures and everybody presents them at council meetings like this. And sometimes it goes way over council's head for obvious reasons. So it's nice that you can like call upon. Thank you. When we get a structure, it shows governance. It doesn't show capability. doesn't show any stress testing or anything like that. I mean, I look at this, I sit on fire, by the way, as well, so blue light services. So I look at this, I think, right, everybody has a structure. If we just take it back, I mean, we can go for Colcane, Colcani, I forget his surname now. That's a major incident. There was preparedness, there was structures, there was interoperability factors built in, the comms work and so on. So how do we prepare as a council for something like stress testing of these?
So really good question, and I think it's a really important question, because one of the key areas that we have is to make sure that we are prepared, but also that we can respond to major incidents, and that's what I'm really grateful for the hard work of the team and that are able to do. What you'll see in the report is we do a number of exercises and training sessions. So what we look at is what the key risks are within our local patch, and then we think around what are our plans in place, so we can do a lot of work around making sure we've got the right emergency plans, whether that's specifically for the council, or there might be broader plans for the local resilience forum, which is that multi-agency plan. And then what we do is we think around what exercises we might need to do to stress test them. So Lucy gave a really good example earlier around, we know that a future pandemic is one of our highest risks. So really fortunately, there was a national pandemic exercise where we literally worked through interjects from a hypothetical COBRA meeting, literally coming through to the local authority, and we set up strategic coordinating meetings, which is sort of gold level, your strategic meetings, and those tactical coordinating groups, so sort of more operational meetings, and tactical response, to think around what does that mean for us. So we were almost role playing, I suppose, in terms of how would we respond, have we got the right services in place, can we connect to the right people and services and populations. So we do that, and we have a really good and comprehensive programme of training around that. Some of that will be through the local resilience forum, and it will be multi-agency. Some of it will be specifically within the organisation. So we know, so Lucy gave a really good example around cyber. We know that you will have seen nationally in lots of the press that many public sector organisations have been hit by cyber incidents. From a business continuity point of view, from the council, that is a key risk for us. So we've had now 2 exercises where we've literally brought in an independent expert who knows exactly how to work around this, and ran through and role played it to understand where our strengths are and where our areas of improvement are. And then the team really helped me then bring together a really comprehensive action plan in terms of what then do we need to put in place to ensure that we're enhancing our response the next time. With any of these incidents, they're complex, they're unpredictable, we don't know which way they're going to go. So there will always be learning for us. But I think what we have got is a really good really good team and a really good history in terms of the responses that we've had. We've had really positive feedback in terms of how the council has particularly responded in their elements, acknowledging that our role will be different to police or fire in those different incidents. But I don't know if any colleagues want to add anything.
Yeah, some examples of the exercises.
If you could focus on interoperability a little bit.
Yeah, can do, but before you move on to me as well. So in terms of the LRF exercises, which have been stress testing, that capability, as you say, that multi-agency working. Last autumn, there was an exercise at Rushford Country Park for chemical, biological, radiological or nuclear CBRN incidents. There's a plan for the next exercise, I believe, to be around mass fatalities. And actually the LRF has purchased capability and kit to stand up and build a storage unit that can be used in the event of a mass fatality incident. So actually planning to set that up and have a test run of actually how long it takes to build that and what's actually involved from a logistical point of view, and getting that up rapidly. A site somewhere in Lincolnshire, just use their field potentially where we're going to look to do that. And so that's just an example, but I don't think you want to talk about a bit more.
Just very briefly, in terms of that structure, probably what's not included in the report and we can provide details of is more the structure that we stand up when there is a response, which you'll probably be familiar with your background in terms of gold, silver, bronze structure. So we can do that. just to assure you that as a local resilience forum, we train regularly around that. Don't try not to use loads of acronyms, but again, emergency services background on a term called GESIP, which is what the emergency services use in terms of their kind of tri-service training. So our training is based very much around that model. So we train that out wider part, not just the emergency service, but ourselves, district etc. And on that, there is a very brief link we can provide, which gives 10-15 minute overview of that for Nottinghamshire. So happy again to provide that if it gives you that assurance of how we actually stand up against profitability.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. I've got a question. It's more around training. We get the emergency training booklet, but I personally don't think that's enough. Being new to the council, I'd be struggling a little bit if there was a major incident in my thing. So I don't know what the other committee members feel, but could we have some sort of seminar or something on further training?
Yeah, so absolutely. So we did hold an introductory session, sort of induction for new and previous members. That was in early December last year, so about 6 months ago now. An hour long, really, just to give you that whistle-stop tour and overview of our core functions, but also particularly around how members can support and particularly with response. Very happy, I think, really positive feedback. I think 50 or 60 members attended both in person and online. But we intended capacity pending to put some additional sessions. And again, we can make this focused and targeted around seasonal risk, for example, perhaps going into the winter and we want a session on flooding. Very happy to support that, and a member of the team could come and do something again in person or online.
Thank you for that. And more on planning as regards to council, how regular and realistic are the emergency exercises carried out?
So it's an ongoing programme, really. I mean, in terms of certainly with our web structure, not changed because we tend to try and do it together. We tend to have a major exercise every year. This year's one will be on cyber and also take into account digital disruptions to critical infrastructure. So that's the major exercise, and that's where we stand up our full kind of structure, so strategic groups, tactical groups, bid or equivalent bid involved in those exercises, down to sort of operational staff. But equally, that structure in the reporting appendix, every year there'll be 3 or 4 different groups that do a specific exercise around those particular risks. So before our major exercise with the LRF, we will have one coming up early autumn and summer around flooding. So that's kind of discussed and agreed in that LRF structure. And we have an annual work plan to make sure that we cover off the top risks for the long presentation. And then internally, we try and supplement stuff around what we're doing with the LRF. So in the build-up to those two exercises I've just mentioned, there may be some internal stuff we want to do in terms of briefing people in advance of those.
Thanks for that, Councillor Clooney.
Hi, thank you for the report. It was really interesting, and especially somebody who's going to visit 2 of the sports grounds in the next 5 or 6 days. That's very. It's good to hear that all the safety things are in place. Really good. So I just got a question about safety of other events that happen around the county. For example, I know we're going to be having a big fair in Arnold Park in June. And I didn't know if you were involved in that's the safety for that as well. Thank you.
So responsibility for issuing safety certificates for events outside of sports grounds sits at district and borough level. So they issue safety certificates or guidance around called the purple guides. We have the green guide safety at sports grounds. It's a separate set of guidance. Again, before they we want to talk in any more detail about that. Again, we're not consulted, and if there is something that's going on in conjunction with one of our sports grounds, but yes, we're going to find it like that environmental health or licensing departments.
Yeah, just to add, as we said, our team are involved in those. Certainly the more significant ones, we'll be asked to attend meetings or review documents. The one slight caveat to that approach is if we have an event where there's a significant impact on the county, might cross a number of districts. So a few years ago, people remember Britain had that come cycle race a couple of years in a row. So because that crosses boundaries, our team actually led that safety advisory group for that event with support from the district. But normally, yeah, it's the district that would lead on that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Darrington.
Thank you, Chair. I think maybe my questions been covered a little bit, but with the expertise from you guys, the response to, as opposed to prevention of, how do you liaise with outside communities and outside bodies? Are you happy with the content of? Are you respected? Are you pushing your element of expertise in your field well enough? And are you happy with where we're sitting at the moment as a county?
Yeah. So I think if I just think about some of the recent incidents that I've been involved in, I think depending on the incident depends on what the response to the community has been or how we might need to respond with that. And it also then depends on the lead agency. So quite often we've had fire potentially going in and knocking on doors if there is, with the recent fires in Wellington, for example, and they led a lot of the comms in and around that. So I'd say the comms approach and how we link with communities is very much dependent on the incident. And I think these are areas that we are looking to develop further in terms of making sure that we have multi-agency coordinated messages across those incidents. So if we have a significant incident, there is a comm cell that's set up to work across all the different agencies so that we're all know who's the lead communicator, but then also think around how we're making sure we have a consistent voice across our service. Do I think that we could do more? I think we can always do more. I mean, I think that it's always good to think around how we can engage our communities in being as resilient as possible. I think some of the work we've done around flooding has been really exceptional actually in Nottinghamshire. We've got communities outside that understand what's going on in their rivers before we do, if we're quite honest. They're absolutely brilliant. And I think some of the flood signage schemes and things like that have really helped develop that. But I'm really keen to think around how we do that more. And how we're really keen to think around how we work more closely at a very hyper-local level, how do we bring that emergency planning community to this response into that. So I don't know if that.
Thank you for that. I'd like to ask one which is asked near all the committees. Do you see any transitional risks with LGR?
So in addition to our statutory duties around emergency planning, district and borough councils also have some responsibilities, and I suppose one of the key priorities for us with this area of our work will be bringing together the emergency planning functions and the capacity and staff across those teams, and potentially unifying with those regulatory services in a new unitary authority. So we worked in other unitary authorities and emergency planning offices with code standards, licensing, health and safety, so there's other sort of regulatory functions. So again, that's something we could potentially be exploring there, but yes, definitely something for us to manage. The real variation in terms of our district and boroughs in terms of those who actually have dedicated officers around emergency planning, and then others who actually we provide resources to them to a certain standard agreement. So again, different for different areas.
Just back to that, what I would say is we've got a really strong local resilience forum across the patch, and that works across Nottinghamshire. So actually, a lot of the relationships are already there and are already cemented. And so yes, there are changes going on with local government reform, but actually some of those other partners may not change straight away. Obviously, there's changes to police and fire in terms of then linking with mayoral organisations at a later point. But I think we've got a really good grounding, and I think because of that, we will be working very closely together to make sure that we mitigate any risks that we possibly can in terms of that transition.
Just to mention, I guess, from a safety and sports ground perspective, depending on where the boundaries fall, that determines which designated ground will fall into which authority. So bearing in mind, City Council, for example, currently got Notts County, Meadow Lane, and then there's also Colic that they regulate.
Thank you for that.
Oh,
Yeah, if I should just add one quick thing to that, is that from my perspective in terms of managing the team and managing planning, I think it's going to make things a whole lot easier because all the things that we need are under one roof. So that's sort of planning and response mode. We have a great relationship with our local authorities in emergency planning, but it just makes it easier, doesn't it, in relation to one organisation covering all those services.
Thank you. Do you have any more comments?
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in?
Oh, sorry.
There's a few of us that sit up that are on this, in this committee today that sit on NOTS Fire and Rescue Service committees, myself included, Councillor Adams, myself, a couple of others. And I think we can see a lot from the work that they do and the link up that they have with the county council in their disaster planning or emergency response. That I think it's fair to say that we've got a very good coverage over the agencies that we have. And something I'd like to pick up on what Councillor Darrington mentioned about partner agencies and groups and things. Flooding is a major issue in my constituency in Woodbury, as I know it is in various others across the county. And we have some wonderful, we call them flats, that's obviously what they are, flood action groups. And there was some training here a few months ago out here, and we empower the community. We empower the groups out in the community to be able to manage locally on the ground any sort of disaster coordination when those floods occur. So I think it's testament to the work that happens here behind the scenes that I think and I feel that Nottinghamshire is well served and protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Storm. No more questions? Councillor Smith?
You mentioned flooding, Jodie, sorry, I had to get in on it. Because my biggest concern with LGR is that we're about to, whoever the Prime Minister may be next week or the week after or in July, to decide it. The Minister will decide in early July what parts of Nottinghamshire are going to get carved up and moved into a city authority, whatever that may look like. My worry is that, like Jodie, I represent areas that flood. Currently, I couldn't name you one place in the city that floods because it's a city and it's built differently than the rural communities we represent. So what work will the Local Resilience Forum or your team do once we know where those boundaries are going to fall to work with the new city authority? I use the word new very loosely to ensure that those experience and learnings and knowledge exists in that new authority. Because if places like Zoch in Rushcliffe go into the city, God help them, if they flood and they don't have that team expertise ready on day one.
So it's a really important point. I think one of the things that I'd just like to provide that assurance around is that we're really keen, all officers, to work really collaboratively with our partners to make sure that we have two really great successive unitaries. So obviously we will have to wait to see what that decision is in terms of where the boundaries lie, and we will respond if we need to. If we need to be leaning in and supporting colleagues in the city to make sure that they're supportive of the flooding, then that's what we will do. And we do also have the period of time where we'll be in the shadow authority, where we will make sure that we start doing that and we will work with that. So I think we'll have to wait and see in terms of what the boundaries lie. But please do be assured that we will work collectively with all of our partners. Acknowledging some of our partners are already working on the patch. If you think of police and fire, for example, or voluntary community sector, quite often they will be supporting across city and county. But we do acknowledge there might be some there's some subtleties and some differences, aren't there, in terms of our different populations, and we will need to make sure that they are supportive, whatever the unitary configuration is.
Thanks for that, Liv. Any more questions? No? Right, I'd like to thank the committee for the comments and questions during this debate and discussions, and they will be noted as part of the committee's consideration of this matter. And then I'd like to ask Martin to read out a summary of the discussion and detail the issues that have arisen.
Yeah, so I think just a few bits of further information that members would like to see. So I think the members would like to see the structure of the LRF, which are actually as utilised during incidents rather than just as kind of business as usual. The further information is provided on how the LRF is set up during incidents, and also the further training sessions are delivered for all members on emergency planning, and it will help them in their role in supporting their communities, including kind of like seasonal events such as flooding, etc.
Thank you for that, Martin. If we've all got no further comments, I'd like to take the recommendations to the vote, please. Thank you very much. What are you doing?
I want to go to the toilet.
No,
It's on autopilot.
okay, I'd like to advise the committee that I will now vacate the chair, leave the meeting during the consideration of the next item. And I'll pass it over to the vice chair.
I don't have a link to the Teams.
Oh, I said it.
You're on your own now.
Right. Spotlight.
Good morning, members. Next item on the agenda is Place Select Committee Highways Asset Management System Performance Update. So the report before us today provides a strategic overview of how the council is managing its highways asset base, rather than focusing on individual schemes and operational decisions. It reminds us first of the scale and importance of the network that we're actually responsible for, an asset valued at over £10 billion, covering roads, footways, bridges, drainage, lighting and rights of way. The purpose of the report is to give this committee assurance on whether the systems, governance and investment decisions in place are robust, sustainable and aligned to best practice. From a service delivery perspective, the report indicates generally strong performance against contractual and operational indicators during 25-26. Emergency response, safety inspections, winter maintenance and bridge inspections are all reported as largely meeting the required standards. At the same time, the report is candid about the disconnect between internal performance and public perception. Resident satisfaction with road conditions remains low, and the road maintenance continues to be the public's highest priority and biggest concern. Questions regarding very specific issues in members' local areas should be raised with the local highways managers in the usual way, or directly with the relevant officer outside of the meeting. Questions should focus on strategic highways issues that impact residents across Nottinghamshire and not just in your local area. As all members will want to discuss and ask questions on this most popular and important item, initially each member should ask one question only, with one supplementary to follow up. So if I could ask you to refrain from asking a string of bullet point questions. Once all members have had the opportunity to ask a question, if time allows, and we can go around again and ask more questions. And that as this is a scrutiny meeting, members should ask direct and specific questions and should avoid making long speeches. I'd like to now invite Councillor Bert Bingham, Cabinet Member for Transport and Environment, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Following the announcement of the record investment into Nottinghamshire's highways, this report provides a strategic overview of the performance of the county's highways assets. These assets number in the hundreds of thousands across 14 classes. This report lands at a time when we are implementing transformational change to the way we deliver and monitor our services. It doesn't focus solely on operational performance and aims to examine the overall system that governs the management of our highway assets. This will enable scrutiny of operational performances, linkages between funding and financing, and long-term trends for asset condition deterioration and value for money. This enables the council administration to make strategic interventions to optimise the systems and improve performance. I would encourage elected members to pay particular attention to the section on page 40, setting out the council's future funding requirements for highway maintenance. There's a 10-year, £1 billion funding challenge ahead of us, and it is imperative that the council's elected leadership is united when we put our call to action to central government to fund the county's local roads properly from the fuel and vehicle excise duties they collect annually. They return about £1 in every 20 at the moment. We are no longer engaged in simply fixing potholes. We are talking about investing in the backbone infrastructure that is vital to our local and national economy. And at this point, I'll pause and hand over to our Director for Highways, Transport and Waste Management, David Langton, who will step you through the highlights.
Through you, Chair. I've prepared a few slides just to help guide us through this and just really shine the light on some of those highlights of the report. Take me hopefully no longer than 10 minutes just to rattle through these for you. There we go. As the report outlines, we are not just looking at the operational performance of how we're delivering the highways operations and maintenance, but trying to lift it up a level so that we can look at the overall asset management system that those activities take place in. This diagram reflects the requirements of the international standard ISO 55000, which sets out international best practice on how to manage physical assets. And as you can see there along the top, there are a number of constraints that our system has to operate in. The views and preferences of our customers, legislation that binds us to deliver on statutory duties or sets limitations on what we can do. The requirements of our funding partners are also another great constraint as well as the overall economic environment that our system operates within. And all of those things feed into our strategic organisational plans. Beneath that layer, there is then strategic asset management planning for how we're going to manage the very large investment that the council puts into these assets. As is already mentioned, our highway assets have value of over £10 billion. That is a dated figure. The last formal asset valuation occurred in 2021. So simply by virtue of inflation, the true value of our assets is probably closer to 12 billion now. So a lot of planning goes in there, and that is supported by formal decision-making processes. Those span the full spectrum from constitutional decisions that the council and elected members need to make, all the way down through the delegations of authority to operational day-to-day decision-making processes. Those things are supported by asset knowledge, competency of staff making those kind of decisions, but also data. And as the report notes, data is one of our largest assets. Just in our Alloy asset management system alone, there's over 16 million individual data points that all need to be managed and maintained and have robust quality assurance processes over them, so that when that data is relied on for decision-making processes, it can be trusted and you can make good quality decisions based on good quality evidence. And as the old adage goes, rubbish in, rubbish out. In there then, there is the circular part of the diagram where decisions around acquiring new assets are made. They're then put into operation. and they're maintained, and then at the end of their life, decisions are made around disposing of those assets if they're superfluous to requirement, or their replacement, so they can then feed back into the acquisition loop. And that often is the area where typically most of our focus goes, in that operate and maintain space. And you've already had the KPIs in the prior report, and I'll go into those in a little bit more detail in a moment. As part of our ongoing continuous improvement efforts, VIA and ourselves have undertaken a maturity self-assessment, and this aims to give us insights into our capability against the requirements of that international best practice standard. And as the report outlines, most of the capability that we believe we have at the moment falls in that developing through to optimizing range. And that is actually a really good, solid starting point for us. As you can see, even at the lower end of the spectrum, what defines developing is that the organisation has identified the means of systematically and consistently achieving the requirements of that best practice standard, and that it can demonstrate that it is being progressed with credibly resourced plans in place. So even at the lowest end of our capability, we know what we need to do. We've got plans in place, they're resourced, and we're making demonstrable progress towards implementing those plans. Obviously, much more positive at the optimizing end of the spectrum as well. Getting into a little bit more detail now, one of the constraints I mentioned before is the requirements our customers, or in our context, community, place on us. Every year, the highways team participates in a national customer satisfaction survey that is run by NHT. And as you can see here, this is just an extract of the headline results, but you've got the full report in the appendices to my report, to Councillor Bingham's report. The big headline here, and it is of no surprise, is that the condition of our roads is the most important issue for the vast majority of our community. It has the least level of satisfaction. Most people believe that it is getting worse. It is also the area where the majority of respondents believe the council would be right to spend more money on the service. The report then goes on to talk about some of our funding partner constraints, and you'll be well aware of the recent red, amber, green, the RAG rating scores that were issued by the Department for Transport nationally. For Nottinghamshire County Council, we received an amber rating overall, and you can see there were three subcategories. For the condition of our assets, we had an amber rating. For the quality of our spend and the volume of our spend, we were rated green. And then overall, for best practice, rated amber. I would draw your attention to some of the commentary in the report about the national criticism that has occurred around that RAG rating system. Of particular note is the misleading nature of some of the scoring. For example, the best practice criteria are actually proxy measures for how much money the local authority is spending on resurfacing roads, and actually have very little to do with technical best practice. So the labelling is not particularly good, not particularly clear, sorry. It has also attracted some criticism for potentially being quite punitive in its approach. Those authorities with the lowest ratings obviously often have access to the fewest resources. So linking some of their maintenance funding to enhance performance and penalising them by taking it away when they're most in need of it is counterintuitive approach to supporting, facilitating improvement to the condition of their roads. Building on the discussions we've already had on the previous agenda item, here you can see the annualised performance rather than just the Q4 performance. And as I explained earlier, the main areas of red are associated with our ability to respond to customer inquiries reporting defects in the carriageway potholes. and because of that dip in Q4, the overall performance for the full year has declined. But outside of that area, we're reporting green performance across the board. As I mentioned before, one of the root causes of that is the sheer volume of public notification, public reports of defects that the team received. As you can see in this graph, the green line shooting up at quite a steep gradient there shows the volume of defect reports received during the month of January. And then the blue and amber lines show the periods for January to March in the prior 2 years. And as I said earlier, within the space of 1 month, we received 3 months worth of defects reports from our community. The report also acknowledges some of the challenges and areas for improvement we've got with our MyNots app, which is one of the main channels that the community can use to report defects. And it lists out a number of potential improvements that we're looking to make ahead of next winter. Issues that arose, for example, would be miscommunications where residents were told their defect had been repaired when it had not. And the reason for that is when one defect was reported multiple times by the same person or multiple people, that created a lot of duplication within the back office of the system. So you had one pothole and some had 50 reports for the same pothole. There was, for obvious reasons, we only dispatched the inspector once to look at that one pothole. The other 49 reports were manually cleared out of the system by administrators. At times, that manual tidy up accidentally triggered the automatic notifications back to the reporters that said, we fixed your pothole. Yeah. Actually, we haven't. We tidied it up and we dispatched the inspector. You can see from the notes around the table, you understand. Obviously not acceptable because it undermines trust that the community has in the council. It's something that we need to address going forward, and we're looking at how we can improve the system so that doesn't happen again. Similarly, the volume of calls put a lot of pressure on the inspector team to get out and go and take a look at them. One area for improvement is looking at having some drop-down menus so that we can collect more information from people that are reporting them. Roughly how deep it is the pothole. Is it in the wheel track of a vehicle, or is it in the centre line, for example? And the ability to upload photographs. That will allow the team at Via to do desktop triaging so that we can just dispatch a repair crew straight away, because we can see from the photos it's very obviously category 1, and then we don't have the inefficiency of working in a train where the inspector must go first, look at it, report back, then a crew is dispatched. So that will enable some streamlining of the process that enables us to be more responsive in the future. If we look at the financial performance for last year, this was a good, solid result. Overall, the Highways Department delivered the core service and our revenue budgets with a circa 300k underspend. So that's something that is hard worked for, particularly given there was budgeted income from the lane rental programme of approximately £1 million. And that programme's been delayed because of the Department for Transport approval process is taking longer than first expected. So compensating for that lost income and still delivering the service for an underspend is a good, solid result. It also reflects a long-term trend. The report looks back at the budgets for the last 6 years, back to 2020. And as you can see, the current actual cost of delivering the service at 18.368 million, the revenue, cyclical maintenance, operating the network. 2025's actual spend is about £600,000 lower than the 2020 actual spend. And that is because of the efficiencies that have been driven through the last few years. Some of the benefits that you get from the dividend returns that come back from Via And effectively, it's neutralised the impact of inflation throughout the entire post-COVID period. Not easily achieved. That is a pattern that is not just restricted to the revenue budgets that we spend through via. On the right-hand side there, you can also see the annualised cost of our electricity usage in our street lighting system through capital investment. Invest to Save programs have again delivered those ongoing efficiencies for you. Upgrading to LED lanterns that use lower levels of power means that we are spending less on electricity adjusted for inflation compared to what we were spending in 2020, 2021. And given the spike in electricity costs in circa 22, 23 post-COVID, again, that's a considerable saving that we've been able to deliver for the community. Unfortunately, the good news is not universal, and there's been plenty of commentary around the overall condition of our highway assets. And this slide just pulls your attention towards the condition of our pavements. As of September last year, when we did our last carriageway inspections, approximately 38% of our roads were either in need of maintenance right now or would be soon, i.e. within the next year or two. And the 2024 estimate of the backlog of deferred maintenance sat at about £391 million. That subsequently peaked at about £414 million, and it's now just started to turn downwards with the additional funding that's become available in the year just gone and then going forward. Line marking shows a similar story, with just over half of our line marking being rated as either being in poor or very poor condition. And the backlog associated with that particular asset sits at about £8 million, which is in addition to the carriageway backlog. And then finally, if I draw your attention to the graph at the bottom, you can see the upward trend in the line there, which shows the percentage of our road network that is deemed to be in need of maintenance right now. And that just speaks to the long-term impacts of funding below the steady state requirement that's largely been a product of the austerity period post the global financial crisis. Just to explain the steady state funding requirement, if you can imagine, our highway network is a bucket full of water with some holes in. Every day, every year, our roads are in use, exposed to the elements, and they are wearing out. And that is effectively the water leaking out of the bucket through the holes. And then your capital maintenance funding to replace assets as they wear out is the water coming in from the tap at the top. If the water flowing in is equal to or faster than the water flowing out, then you achieve a steady state and the level in the bucket doesn't get any lower or stays the same. Same concept. As assets wear out and roads get to the end of their life, if you resurface them and spend enough money on capital maintenance, you'll hold the condition of the network at a steady state. If you put more money in, you'll be able to lift the overall condition of the network. But if you put less in, the water leaks out of the bucket faster than you're topping up, and the condition slowly declines over time. To mitigate that, one of the tactical responses that has occurred over recent years is to prioritise the funding we do have towards the carriageway assets, the surface of our roads, because that is the thing that our community cares the most about. And it is the thing that attracts the most conversation with the national discussion around potholes, rather than the overall condition of all of our highway assets. What that means is that other highway assets, our traffic signals, our bridges and structures, crash barriers, all of those are have been further defunded so that their share of maintenance funding that is available can be ploughed into maintaining the surface condition of the roads. So when we talk about the £400 million backlog, it is important to stress that that is only for carriageways. There are other backlogs, some of which are not yet quantified for our bridges, for our structures, for our drainage assets, and they all have deferred maintenance that will at some point need to be caught up on. I would like to draw your attention to the chart in the top right of the slide. And as you can see, there is starting to present a declining curve. And that is the impact of long-term underinvestment in our bridge stocks starting to just show through. And as we continue to not invest sufficiently in replacing components of our bridges as they wear out, we'll see that trend continue and likely accelerate. And I'll circle back to this when we come back to the funding and lobbying side of the report shortly. But it is important to note, whilst we're not in crisis mode by any stretch of the imagination, and we have no immediate safety concerns around our bridge stock, if this persists for the long term, there is a sleeping giant that will eventually wake up. I will just take a moment to draw your attention to these graphs that are in the report, partly because it's an opportunity just to do a little bit of community myth busting, because across the 7 districts and boroughs, there is sometimes a misperception that particular areas, roads are way, way worse than other areas, or others enjoy a much better quality of service from the council. Whilst there are some natural fluctuations, what you can see in these graphs is that there is a fairly good degree of consistency across all 7 districts and boroughs and across all road categories, and most are correlating around the county-wide average. Moving on to, or back to the maintenance side of things, I just did want to demonstrate one of the key factors that is driving our RAG rating with the Department for Transport. It's also a key determining factor in value for money and our ability to manage the highway within the budgets that we've got available. And that is this concept of worst first versus preventative maintenance. So all assets, all pieces of road deteriorate over time, and you can see that in this curve. And as you watch the red dot, over time, the condition of the roads decline until it gets to the bottom of the curve. And at that point, you've got a broken road that needs capital maintenance. And those roads that get to the bottom of the curve are often put in the worst first category. They're the ones that your residents complain to you about because they look like the craters of the moon. There is then a significant investment required to resurface those roads and bring them back up to an acceptable condition before the process then repeats itself and that new road surface begins to decline over time. The alternative strategy is, as roads start to deteriorate, there is a point early on in that curve where you make a light touch maintenance intervention using preventative maintenance treatments. That is your surface dressing, micro asphalts, and small scale patching. That much smaller investment allows you to restore the condition of the asset and then re-enter the deterioration curve. And multiple smaller investments give you a much longer life to your asset and deliver much greater value for money for the community over time. And this is one of the challenges, is balancing that clamour and demand to fix the roads that are in the worst condition of in our county versus doing the right thing, which is making that preventative maintenance investment. And it's difficult, and I understand this from an elected member's point of view, when people are saying, why are you fixing that road? It doesn't look that bad compared to this road, and this road. It is also going to be one of the key determining factors of whether we can improve the amber rating with the Department for Transport back to green. Again, looking back at the trends over time, you can see in the table at the top there the ratio of reactive maintenance to preventative maintenance that we've been undertaking. And the balance in the past has been skewed towards reactive maintenance, fixing things once they're broken rather than anticipating and intervening early. Over time, there has been some move to drive that balance the other way so that we're investing a greater proportion in preventative maintenance versus reactive. And that correlates, as you can see in the graph on the bottom, in a declining cost of the cost to maintain a mile of road. So as we've increased the amount of preventative maintenance we've done on the network, it has got cheaper to maintain our roads per mile of road maintained. And that is a trend that we want to continue. And it's why the 6-point plan has placed a strong emphasis on prioritisation of preventative maintenance so that we can continue to drive that cost per mile as low as we possibly can, but accepting that we're not going to be able to optimise the system because we still need to go and fix all of those roads that we've already got that are in the worst first category that your residents are in your area about every day. I'm getting close to finishing.
I'm going to say 10 minutes was up.
Yeah, sorry. I'll skip through. There's been enough discussion around the 6-point plan in prior forums, so I won't go into too much detail here. One of the positive things, though, is that with the increased investment that we have at our disposal this year, our forward-looking predictive modelling estimates that we should be able to reduce the backlog of deferred maintenance from its peak of about 414 million down to about 317. That is material progress, or will be material progress in lifting the condition of the network, but still need to acknowledge £300 million of backlog is still a lot of roads that are in a poor condition. And that leads us on to the need for a long-term boost to our funding. My animations are out of order, so what you can see in this chart is the blue bars represent the funding that we have confirmed and secured through all of our sources for capital maintenance, whether it's through direct funding from council in the MTFS or through the funding grants that we get from the DFT via MCA. The red line at the top shows the steady state funding requirement. And as you can see, 2026 is the first year where we have actually got to the point where we've met and exceeded the steady state funding requirement. And years prior to that, going back to 2015 and beyond, are all substantially below the estimated steady state funding requirement. The amber bars show the unsecured funding demand that we need to pursue for the next 10 years so that we can sustain this short-term boost in funding for the long term so that we can be appropriate stewards of our highway assets and actually lift the overall condition of the network and deliver on our community's expectations. So cumulatively, those amber bars add up to just shy of £1 billion, which leads us on to our lobbying strategy. The Treasury collected in the prior financial year circa £32 billion in tax receipts from vehicle and fuel excise duties. That doesn't include the VAT that is also collected on fuel. However, of that money, only 1.6 billion, or just under 1.6 billion, was allocated to local road capital maintenance. The rest was spent on obviously national highways. The strategic motorway network needs funding. Improvements need funding. I'm getting the hurry up from the chair. Simply put, that level of funding is not adequate to manage the local road network, and it puts our roads on a cycle of replacement and maintenance in the order of many tens, if not hundreds of years between maintenance, and roads simply cannot last that long. So it's an impossible challenge at the moment, and there needs to be more money put in the system. The prevailing view is that ought to come from the revenue from fuel taxes, because it is a little unjust to ask local council taxpayers to pay the second time through their council tax to maintain the roads, because their view will be, we've already paid for this. I know it's my view. Every time I fill up a pump, I'm paying to fix the roads.
Thanks very much, David.
Yeah, sorry, I'll leave it there. So close to finishing. I'll hand back to Councillor Biggin to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, David, for that comprehensive presentation. Obviously, we're going to move toward the committee considering and commenting on the contents of the report. So back to the Vice Chairman. to open the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Didn't interrupt because I think it's important to get the detail behind the report. So thank you for that. Really enjoyed that. So to move to recommendations as detailed in the report and to seek a seconder.
I'll second that. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you. So I'd like to open the floor for Dave Clark.
I like that.
Yeah. So I'd like to open the floor for questions. Please remember what I said earlier so that it makes it concise for everybody. I have a question first. Sorry, Sam.
Terrible.
Second. First dibs. Just this quite a quick one. Residents rank road condition as the most important issue, and it certainly was for every one of us on the doorsteps. But with the lowest satisfaction level, what specific changes will the public actually see in the next 12 months to address this perception and gap?
Thank you, Dave. Well, the first thing is, and I've already touched on the urgent repairs that were accelerated into March, April. There is a vast increase in investment and the change, if you like, the upscaling in our operations and the quality monitoring of service delivery. I do think that with our 10 additional teams, including the 2 Pothole Pro teams, well publicised, they're going to be operating year round, and the surface treatment programme that's going to be, capital programme that's going to be taking place this summer, that you're going to see a vast difference by the start of next winter. For a start, we're already getting very positive feedback from the public and members actually, and we will be go out there proactively carrying out preventative maintenance, not reactive, or a lot of reactive maintenance that's been taking place this winter. Part of that, by the way, I'd like to make a point because it's often touched on that there won't be any temporary repairs. Clearly, if there are emergency repairs required, that will still take place occasionally during the winter, but we should be well on top of it by then. However, I caveat that with what David's just said about the £400 million deficit, which we're looking to reduce by almost 100 million or of that order this year. We're at the start of a long road, if you'll forgive the pun. So yeah, we're very optimistic about what's going to happen this year. And I'd like to thank the colleagues at VIA, partner colleagues at VIA, because it's been a vast programme of work to undertake and begin to implement. So with that, I will come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bingham. Councillor Sam Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was drafted in Vice Chairman, but I'll promote you. I was doing such a fine job. If you'd have cut him off 15 minutes earlier, I'd definitely call you Chairman. I was drafted in last minute to substitute, and I'm really glad I did. It's a bit of therapy for myself, because if you look at page 48, and it shows the curve of the proportion of the network needing maintenance, just as I became leader, that dropped off a cliff and dived down, which is a good thing in this sphere, because we put record amounts of money in, £72 million into that, and we did far more maintenance rather than reactive, but proactive with surface dressing, etc., which is really important. And that's why you see those figures there today. So I'm going to print that off and put it on my wall as a well done to myself, doing this for everybody else.
Councillor Smith, do you have a question?
Just let me have a minute, you know what I mean? Yeah, plenty. The gully thing, Councillor Adams made a point earlier, that 100%, that isn't reality. And I think we need to dive into that a bit further. It might be 100% that been expected. Of the 10 that are on your list, there's gullies out there that have been inspected for years. I just don't think 100% is correct. My question is on work permits. page 43. Councillor Darrington, I'm an avid viewer of your social media. I think you did a marvellous job. And put a video up the other day about the fact that there's no works going on roads, but the permit says they can stay in place for the traffic lights and stuff. There's nothing more that winds residents up other than avoiding potholes. It's getting stuck in traffic lights where no work's being done. And we've only have an inspection pass rate of 76% off the target of 100%. That's mad bonkers, and no wonder why we're having all these issues across the network. What we're doing now to target that and get that up a bit more, getting out there, inspecting them. If they've done 3 days early, great, clear up 3 days early and clear off, so we're not stuck in traffic. I just want to know what we're doing to tackle that. Thank you for my limelight moment.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, the streetworks side of things is an area of renewed focus this year for exactly the reasons you've just outlined. So getting the streetworks inspectors out there more often, using the fixed penalty notices process that we have access to infringe those utility contractors that are not being efficient. So that we can incentivise them with the stick as much as possible to get off the road and minimise the disruption for the travelling public. So happy again to provide more detail on the progress that we make in future reports and future committee meetings. The other side of things is we continue to pursue the lane rental programme and seeking the DFT's approval for that. That will provide a direct financial incentive on the key network, about 10% of the most busy roads in the network, where we will have effectively a pay-as-you-go model, where if the utility operators want to work during peak times, they have to pay a premium. And the intention is not to generate revenue as much as that is needed. The intention is to provide a financial incentive to do work in off-peak times and minimise disruption.
Good.
Councillor Adams, please.
Thank you. Yes, my question is around cost analysis. Now, obviously, we've been through a period, particularly with the likes of energy costs, which we discussed earlier, which have seen mass accelerations, but also in terms of staffing costs as a result of actions by the current government. What I would like to understand is as VIA is doing work on behalf of Nottinghamshire County Council, the budget obviously comes through Nottinghamshire County Council, they then do the work. And I also recognise they're wholly owned by Nottinghamshire County Council, so there's no shock there in terms of how that works. But what I really want to understand is what work do we do to benchmark across the whole industry to make sure that what we are actually getting from our wholly owned company is value for money, and then when things are going in terms of specifically, I refer to issues around when we have certain contractors involved, and the quality of workmanship is a lot to be desired. We've witnessed as councillors and residents of that. So first of all, what sort of recompense do we seek back from the contractor as a result of that work? But secondly, the costing, so that we're getting the best value money for Nottinghamshire County Council's residents. What work is being undertaken or is planned to be undertaken, and what's the smart name? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Multiple points to respond to your question there. First one, my intention is to start shining a light on those unit rate costs so that we can demonstrate through benchmarking activities that we are getting value for money. It's part of the reason why you've got that graph that shows the cost per mile of road maintained as a starter. But we are starting now to monitor the square metre rates so that we can actually benchmark if we do this particular activity, how much does it cost us versus how much does it cost another local authority. Myself and my team are imminently due to participate in a value for money exercise that's been facilitated by AMCA, where our highway maintenance activities will be compared to those of peer councils across parts of the country, again, specifically so that we can get a barometer of how well we're delivering from value for money point of view. So at this stage, indicators that I've got don't give me any cause for concern, but I would like at future reporting cycles to be much more categoric and evidence-based in giving you that assurance, and that will start to come through in future reports.
my supplementary, if that's all right. We did say we did supplementaries in this committee, didn't we? Yeah. Just further to your point there, David, thank you for that. Just in regards to the repair activity, you're saying there you're going to be working out cost per square metre. Can you confirm that you'll be determining both time taken in the different types of way you repair potholes as well? Time taken, including based on what the actual action was, i.e. was it done with Pothole Pro, was it done with 4 people in a wagon, however that took place, and what we're getting, again, looking at that value for money aspect, are we getting value for money for the different types of repairs, and if so, when are we looking to review that, and would we change that at that point? Thanks.
Through you, Chair, yes, absolutely, we'll be looking at evaluating all of those. We've obviously got multiple tools in our toolbox, and the Pothole Pros are a recent addition. Part of the reason we took them on a leasing basis is that preserves an off-ramp, that when we evaluate the performance, if we're not happy with them, we have a way of exiting without being lumbered with the expensive assets that we bought and paid for. That said, though, ever the optimist, we also have ensured that there's ways for us to increase the number of Pothole Pros if they prove to be highly effective, or consider purchasing as well if that turns out to be the more optimal model. So yes, we will be. And apologies, I missed the second half of your earlier question. Where there are defects in workmanship, it is standard practice in all of our contracts for construction that the repairs and remedial and rework is borne at the cost of the contractor that undertook the original work. So it should not come at an additional cost to the taxpayer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Just a quick one, in the report as well, we've recruited 3 clerks of works to monitor quality, basically, so that's ongoing. And I'm very interested in the rate comparison, because my background in mining and quarrying means I was an estimator and monitored plant fleets, that kind of thing. So I'm very interested in that. And then really that's what we're doing at the moment, is carrying out comparative trial, almost extended trial. And that will determine decisions at the end of the year. Thank you.
Jess. Thank you. Councillor Will, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My first question follows on quite neatly, actually, from what David Langford was just saying about the Pothole Pro, which I should say is scheduled to be on Willow Road in my division today. So thank you, Bert. David, you mentioned that the Pothole Pro is leased. Can you give the committee some information about why the decision was made at this time to go for a leasing arrangement, why that represents best value, and what the options are for the use of these 2 machines in the future?
Through you, Chair. As I mentioned already, the leasing model in the first instance does give us that degree of flexibility, because we want to evaluate how well these machines perform before making significant capital investment to purchase them. A leasing option was an obvious choice. That said, though, purchase is not always the best delivery model. And with all of our plant and equipment, whether it's excavators, trucks, or any other gear, there's often a value for money lens applied around, is it better to own it, or is it better to lease? And often those leasing arrangements, as is the case with the Pothole Pros, come with maintenance and servicing agreements that remove some of the risk associated with mechanical breakdowns and other bits and pieces of owning complicated machinery with lots of moving parts. So it's a judgment call, but in the first instance, it's about facilitating the trial and keeping options open.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have a very quick, I'll call it a second question rather than a supplementary question. We don't do supplementary questions. Is it right that the previous administrations looked at the use of JCB machines and rejected them, and if so, why have we now gone for this particular Pothole Pro machine?
Through you, Chair, yes, the Pothole Pro has been looked at in the past. A different point in time, a older model of machinery, and JCB have made a number of enhancements in their more recent models. So I think as things change, you keep them open-minded, you respond and change with it. Again, key point of difference, when the Apollo Pro was trialled previously, it was more like a demonstration for a day. We've undertaken an extended trial so that we can actually put it through its paces, get a gauge for things like how frequently does it have mechanical breakdowns, because machines with lots of hydraulics inevitably have hydraulic hoses leak. It's the nature of the business we're in. So a proper put it through its paces trial based on a newer version of the machine is why we've revisited this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Introna, and then it'll be Councillor Clooney after that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a question on some of the data, but before that, I do welcome some of the pragmatic views that I certainly see from Councillor Darrington, Councillor Vernon, in some of the things they do, and also the comment from you, Councillor Bingham, about temporary repairs will still be out there in certain circumstances. I don't think it's helped by your leader going on social media telling everybody everything's going to be repaired within 72 hours, when that's pointedly not going to happen. I've got a question just on the data on the customer satisfaction survey. So on page 33, paragraph 11, that leads into the table on page 34, top of page 34. It says, how satisfied are we with the condition of the roads? And I'm presuming that's 15% satisfaction rating. Yeah, if we go to that table in the page 43, where it says the same NHT customer satisfaction report, it says that highway maintenance satisfaction is 40%. So I'm just wondering why there's that disparity, if I may. Thank you.
Through you,
I just wondered if I'm missing something. I'm not trying to.
I think you're comparing apples with oranges. One is an explicit question about the condition of the roads. The other is a question about the broader highway maintenance service at large, I think.
That sounds like two apples. One might be a Cox's orange pippin and the other one a golden delicious, but both apples, sure. I was just wondering, the question is around data, because coming back to Councillor Smith's point about drains and lighting, I know for a fact that just in my own division, we're nowhere near 100% or 98%. So it just, I just wonder whether the reporting is as accurate as we feel, and I'm just questioning whether there just needs to be a little bit of a subsurface dive. I'm not trying to say you're right or wrong, but those two numbers on customer satisfaction are both under the National Highways and Transport Network, NHT, same survey. One says 15, one says 40, one says highway maintenance, the other one says condition of roads. I don't think many people in the public would say that there's much of a difference between those two descriptions. So what I'm asking is, can we just have a bit of a dive into why those numbers are different? Thank you. I don't have a supplementary. Vice Chairman, you'd be pleased to know.
Hi, thank you, Vice Chair. Just a couple of things. The first thing that I wanted to mention that hasn't been mentioned yet was in the satisfaction survey about how well our public transport's doing in all those metrics. Really good results there. I wonder how much of that is. I know there's lots of bus companies around, but I'm wondering how much is to do with non-emergency transport, which is obviously excellent, certainly in my division. My other question is about, it's paragraph 67. I'm just trying to find it. And I think there's probably a misprint here saying that the something about the end, it says about following the council's previous decision to establish the East Midlands Combined County Authority. I don't know if that was the county's decision to establish that to EMCA, but it is talking about obviously the increased funding that has come from that body. I think that's, I may be wrong, obviously.
Okay, is that what you meant?
Okay. Sounds like Councillor Radcliffe, that's an answer.
So do you not need an answer now?
It was just voted through council, wasn't it? I think I assume that's what it means.
Does it mean to be part of MCA, is what it means, not to establish MCA?
Clarity you're asking for.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair. This may just simply be by virtue of me being relatively new and being out of the country for the last 12 years. I've just been a little clumsy in my language and how I've described that.
Okay.
But it is, as you've said, the council's decision to participate in AMCA.
Just a quick point on the public transport, because it's a Nottinghamshire County Council survey. I'm not sure that City is included in that, but I understand where you're from.
Yeah, I will come back on that and say, obviously, but people in our divisions are using Nottingham City Transport, that's why it might be such a good, outcome.
It's a sales pitch.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Darrington.
So just back to the pothole pro. So a piece of kit is only ever as good as its operative. So what is the progress report so far with the new drivers that's been recruited to do the work? Obviously, initially it's going to be a slow process. What's it looking like on the ground as far as speed?
Through you, Chair. You are right, it's early days. The Pothole Pros only started operating at the beginning of this month. We are looking to do an initial review of the data and the performance at the end of this calendar month, once we've got the first tranche of monthly data. Anecdotally, feedback from the operators is generally positive. Again, with something new, there are teething issues that we'll work our way through. And again, another reason why we wanted to go for an extended period of time for the trial is to allow a honeymoon period for teething issues to pass and then really put them through their paces. But we will bring information back once we've done that initial review. In terms of the drivers, again, another reason for the leasing is we were able to bring on subcontractors that are going to do the actual repairs who already have trained and experienced drivers. That has allowed us to hit the ground running. And that's also facilitating a training program whereby staff will get trained up and gain experience using the machines over the next 6 months. So again, we've got some redundancy and resilience in the workforce with multiple drivers that have done more than just get their ticket after a 3-day course, but have used the machines to gain experience and quality workmanship.
Thank you. I'll also, just for the record, that I did direct the young operative over to Via, and he informed me last week that he's now successful and he's really enjoying it. So that's a great success story.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne.
Small observation for the members, but I'm sure it affects their staff. I do follow Councillor Darrington's postings where we're seeing all this lovely work going on and the customers can see where the money's going. For some reason I keep getting Councillor Smith's potholes open as well. So I follow Councillor Darrington. But all the others, potholes in Newark East, all the others, can they stop taking pictures with this lovely machine and 6 guys leaning on the shovels watching it? It just doesn't look good.
Your question, Councillor Bennett.
Yeah, the question is, can the members stop showing the negative side?
Your question for...
That's what we see. I'm pressing the members, but I'm also saying, can Via stop getting 6 guys watching the machine for the photographs?
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
I'm tripping that, that's brilliant.
Councillor Mason.
Without knocking the lungs out, I thought Councillor, in terms of observation, because there's only a small difference in wording, and it can be inferred that you like change the category where, apples is apples and pears is pears. Can we just keep the questions the same, please? And then you won't get that deviation. The customer, the residents will take it as a different kind of question, so as we can get that direct comparison, and then we make it life easier for these kind of meetings to give, 15%, 40%, it's two different figures, because that's a large discrepancy there. So only a suggestion, please, to note that if you're going surveys, the consistency would be good on the question.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, I'd like to ask Martin to read out the summary of the discussion in detail of the issues that have arisen. Thank you.
If you just give me a moment, I'll just message so that the chair can come back, because I don't think members will want to be held up even longer than they are. So I'll just message them and come back, and then I'll read it. Firstly, it's apologies, David, because it's probably a lot more work for you. Where are we? Highways. So I think these requests, I think members just feel, even though this was like a massively detailed report, I think members feel there's some areas where they would like some, I think it's looking very close, where they would like some more detail. So I think it would be really helpful if members could get a briefing note on the condition of gullies, the inspections, everything that's being carried out, so the members get that kind of like that picture that kind of like meets what they're seeing on the ground about the condition of gullies. We have had the lane rental scheme come to committee before, probably about 18 months ago, but if members could have a briefing report on the progress that's being made in the development of the lane rental scheme, I think that would be helpful. I think, bearing in mind what Councillor Schroeder said, Councillor Mason said, I think it would be helpful if we could have further information on the analysis that's got from the customer satisfaction survey and what this information really clearly shows. There's kind of like those broader topics, bearing in mind that some of the language may have been a little bit confusing for some people. And finally, you say you're going to do an analysis on the pothole pros kind of like initial kind of like work. So if it could be possible, if that could be shared with members when that's available, I think members would find that really helpful. That's it for me.
I'd confirm that the members' points have been captured. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just take a vote on it.
I'd like to take a vote on the recommendations, please. Thank you. So I'd like to vacate the chair. Let the real chairman come back in and return to the meeting. Thank you.
That was run much better that last time.
Thank you.
I didn't realise you were back.
Well, thank you, Vice Chair, for conducting that last item on the agenda. And moving on to item 7 on the agenda work programme. And I'll ask Martin to introduce it, please.
I'll agree. Just kind of like say, we have got the review on the state transport program. I have emailed everyone about that, so if you've not already emailed me, say you'd like to take part in that review, please let me know. The review of country parks is being sorted out this week with my colleagues in Scotland. We're trying to get the dates sorted out for some like site visits to the country parks as well as meetings in County Hall for that review. So we're trying to get that sorted out as soon as possible. I'm also trying to get sorted out the work programme session. There's a lot of diaries to look at, a lot of coordination to do, so we'll get that done hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So you'll receive information from the senior officers like David and Derek and colleagues about what's coming up with place over the next year, and then you can make suggestions, and then we'll work through the process we did last year, like shortlisting and then creating the work programme. So you're all welcome to come to that, and any member, any non-cabinet member who's not on the committee is also welcome to come to that, because as Councillor Mason says, good ideas are provided by lots of people, not just members of the committee. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll get the information out to you as soon as possible. It's like top priority for me to get this sorted out. That's what I'm doing there.
Yeah, can I just ask a question about the country parks review?
Yeah.
And so has an invite gone out about attending that? Not yet.
We're trying to get that sorted out. It's obviously the country parks are operated by different providers, so we're trying to work out when's good for members to go. And obviously, want to do it during the summer, so you can really see it and what that falls through.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just a suggestion for the work programme. I've been reading with interest on, I'm not going to swear, but the BBC news website about Leicestershire City Council have started trialling a CCTV car that can enforce yellow lines as well as school. So at Nottinghamshire County Council, we can only do it for issuing fines outside schools. Leicester are trialling this car that can do it for yellow lines and other parking restrictions, and I wondered if we could add that to the work programme to have a look at that and see how we can introduce it in Nottinghamshire, because otherwise we're relying on wardens that aren't necessarily always there when we need them.
Yeah, we can put that on the long list.
Thank you.
You're chicken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, welcome back. In a similar vein, I wouldn't say inundated, but on a regular basis, I am getting queries from residents about parking under yellow lines, parking in inappropriate places, certain people seeming to, businesses seeming to be able to get away with parking where they like, when they like. And could we sort of bring that together with the discussion that Councillor Smith's just mentioned? Because one of the key issues that we have is if we've got cars blocking the highway or blocking, more importantly, pedestrian footpaths, so people with mobility issues that can't get past them are having difficulties. If you phone the council up, they tell you it's the police. If you phone Dire Islands up, they tell you it's the police. Yep. If you phone the police up, they tell you it's the council.
Yeah.
And I'm fed up of having discussions with the police when I say, well, then which council? And they don't know. And then I say, well, I'll tell you what, you're going to have 5 minutes talking to a supervisor and come back and tell me you're still not going to deal with it. And I'll phone your assistant chief constable up, shall I, on his mobile, because it is the police responsibility according to Higher Highways. And I just think we need to have some clarity as members about who's responsible for what action we can take, but also what are we going to do as a council to enforce these issues, make sure that people who are parking on verges, parking on footpaths, parking on them when the cars are not taxed or MOTs, rather than the flipping things seized like we do in other areas. And I just think it's a general topic that we need to raise as a council, get some clarity and get some agreement cross-party to get some action taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Controller. I've got control, sorry. One word. I quite agree with you. I get loads and loads of emails about similar situations, and it is totally frustrating being took from one place to another council, district council, county council, police, and it's just a minefield and you don't seem to get anywhere with it. And when it comes to residents, you feel, well, impotent, if I might say that word. So yeah, I'm sure we can look at that. Councillor Clooney.
Yeah, just on the back of that, I get a lot of this as well, particularly parking on pavements. It's quite a big thing in my division. People complain all the time, and I believe it is with the police. And I think the last thing I had was to get to take a photo, as long as you know exactly when it's happening, and then they can try and follow it up, I think. But also, just to add, I think there is some legislation coming in around this area, but I'm not quite sure exactly when it's coming. But there's definitely some legislation coming around this.
Thank you, Councillor Clooney. Yeah, all those suggestions we'll take on board and put it into the work programme going forward. Any more comments? All right, I'd like to thank the officers, members, cabinet members for your attendance in the meetings now closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.